All right, here we go. So this is Kickout Chronic Pain, a channeled perspective shift. And I literally got this entire procedure kind of channeled to me as I was doing it. But once I got to the other side of it, the universe literally said, okay, here you go. I don't do a lot of handwritten channeling anymore because of my personal pain journey and my neurological thing. But doing this, it came through so incredibly quickly. And that's why I have the actual piece of paper here that it all came out of to share with you. So I want to start with what I'm not first. I want to talk about what we're going to cover and what I'm not. So this is going to be an hour or so that we're going to watch this. And what if this 1 hour would change your life? Like, what if it just could happen? I know for me personally, I literally have had conversations with me that have changed my life. Some of you might even be present in the room for those conversations. There have been one line here, one line there that I was literally able to put into action in my life every day that changed my perspective. And that is the point of this presentation. This is what we're going to cover when it comes to kicking out chronic pain. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm going to let you know what we're going to talk about in case you want to jet out, okay? I get it that everybody's on a different place in their journey. Everything that I say comes through unconditional love without any judgment. I don't know you personally, or I might know you personally a little bit. But if you're here, you're brought here for a reason. There is nothing that I could say to you that would come from me judging you, because I have been in the place that you are in, most likely. There is nothing that comes through that is said from a place of judgment. It's said about radical self-awareness and paying attention to where we are. I'm not asking you to buy anything, although I will include some links to things that have helped me. I will include some information to stuff that has helped me along the way. What I'm going to do is share my journey with you through my chronic pain and into a space where I am constantly healing, into a space where I have had enough personal physical healing that it feels miraculous. Like it feels like I went down to the river and Jesus laid his hands on me, okay? And however you want to look at that, you want to look at that. But I'm going to share with you what the universe said worked for me, what I experienced through it, and it is no judgment on where you are or what you are doing. Pay attention to the things that you are resistant to in this message, because it's in those spaces of resistance that your clues for expansion are held. It is in those spaces of resistance where you will find the most growth. And it is those spaces where we go, no way, I'm not doing that. I don't like this chick. I want to punch her in the face. Whatever it is, those are the spots that we need to pay attention to. Not necessarily because you have to do that thing, but you have to figure out why you're so resistant to it. You have to figure out how it ties in to your pain story, to your trauma situation, to your forming of your conditioning and how you look at yourself in this world. So pay attention for the resistance. And if you can't watch this all the way through because you just get so mad at me, please, I am going to send out a little email at the end of this, probably tomorrow, with some of the links for the places that have helped me and a replay of this. Please go back and watch it. Please go back and watch it and allow the experience to kind of soak in and pay attention to the places where you are resistant. What I am not. Now, I'm sure that people could fill volumes with what I am, but I'd like to tell you what I am not. I'm not perfect. I'm not an expert. I'm just a person who found personal healing. I'm just a person who used these steps myself on this journey. I'm not a doctor. If you are having situations that you feel like I should talk to my doctor before I start carrying crystals in my pocket, or I should speak to my doctor before I start moving, eating, thinking differently, please do. Don't hesitate. I'm not a therapist. There's no letters after my name. Don't look to me for therapy. That's not what I do. What I do is I share unconditional love from the universe. I'm an amplifier of oneness, and I'm a spiritual consultant. So this is really about making the change in the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual in our life every day that kicks out chronic pain, that shifts how we experience it, and that will change its role in your life. And I am not an expert. It's the last one. I'm sharing what was channeled. I followed the information and I'm sharing that experience now. All right, so let's talk about what I am. I'm a person who's having a journey into healing, perfect healing, because we have to own those words, right? This is part of the perspective shift. Using these simple steps on my own journey, I am in an awakening. I believe that we each house a piece of divine oneness within every single one of us. I laugh a lot. I enjoy life. I don't take myself too seriously, and I am healing. I am more healed every day than I was yesterday. When I look at myself at where I was then, and I look at myself where I am now, it is two completely different spaces. And this is the space that we are going to step into over the next 40 minutes or so. So what are the steps? What are we going to do? They're going to encompass practical, spiritual, physical, and emotional personal mindset shifts. What do you believe? We're going to talk about what is reality, what is belief, what is diagnosis versus prognosis. Making a choice, a discussion of how our own free will affects the physical. That one gave me a lot of resistance. And then practical application, the changes that you can make today that will change your life. And I'm going to do the warning right here. This work is going to challenge you. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. It is very simple, however. But you will be asked to look honestly at your darkest corners. I'll put it in quotes, darkest corners. Radical self-awareness is what we're going to be practicing. A heightened sense of our unhealed spaces and how we are affected by everything that happens to us every single day. And the more honest you are with yourself, the better this work is going to go for you, the better this challenge into yourself, this new, we are going to work on this. We are going to talk about this. When you love yourself unconditionally, everything works better. And we're going to dig into this also from a physical perspective, not just from a woo-woo, love and light, let me shut my eyes and think about love. This is from a physical perspective. And perspective shifting empathy, shifting how we see others in the world and shifting how we see our place in the world. And that can completely change our entire experience. So if you are ready to jump in, just before we start, I want you to ask yourself, are you willing to heal? Are you willing to heal? Physical healing can never be promised, of course. We're going to discuss a perspective shift. There are degrees of healing that can happen spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Are you okay with healing this much? Are you okay with healing a lot? Before you heal someone, ask him if he's willing to give up the things that made him sick. What are you willing to give up? This is a tough question. This is a very tough question. And guess what? You don't have to tell me. It's none of my business. It's none of my business what you're willing to give up to kick out chronic pain, to change the perspective on your life. It's yours. It's your life. It's your free will. It's between you and the universe. But you are going to get the most out of this if you are the most honest with yourself as we move through these steps. Because while these steps are simple, they're not easy. But they will help us moving forward on the journey, because healing is a journey. And sometimes you're going forwards and sometimes you're backsliding a little. And sometimes we got to turn left because there's construction. But as long as we keep going and we're taking it in stride and we're not looking at life in in a way where it is too serious, no matter how serious our circumstances are, if we can stay lifted, which I know is difficult, it changes your life. It changes the experience you have. Okay, so let's keep jumping in. Here we go. We're going to start with, what do you believe? Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey as we go along here. In 2010, I started to notice numbness and my lack of movement in my feet. I worked in a restaurant. I was a bartender. I was on my feet 10 to 12 hours a shift, 4 to 5 nights a week easily. And I was having a problem getting around. So this continued to progress until a doctor sat me down and said, you have XYZ neuropathy, and it will only get worse. It will never get better. And at some point, you won't be walking anymore. Well, at that point, I was already almost using a cane. And I had used a cane on vacation. It was like 2012 or so. And that was huge. I believed what he told me. Now, the diagnosis, 100% true. It has been confirmed by several doctors. But what I realized and what I have been embracing is that my prognosis, while the diagnosis can be true, my prognosis, as in the outcome that from this or how it's going to progress, does not have to go the way that the doctor said. But I believed what they said to me, exactly as they said it. And I started to live that in my actual life. Now, is that a coincidence, or is that just a doctor who's very, very good at what he does? I mean, some people would say that it's because the doctor was so great at what he does. But also prophetic truth, right? Prophetic truth. We want to know the truth. We need to have the facts about whatever physical ailment we are carrying in our body right now, whatever physical thing we are experiencing or suffering from, or however you like to word it for yourself. Is what's happening to us the prognosis progressing in the way that the doctors laid out, in the way that your research is laid out? How much of what's happening to you is coming from a prophetic form of truth, and how much of what you're going through is coming from the actual physical ailment? And this is a very touchy subject. Believe me, I've been there. I've been there. This is a situation where you're kind of like, well, of course I have it. Of course it's real. Of course you have it. Of course it's real. Nobody is doubting that. But a shift in how you look at it, a shift in how you believe that situation is, can change everything, right? So if we use an example of someone who has something, an ailment that comes on later in life, and someone who has an ailment that they are born with, right? The ones who are born with it may not see how difficult it is to live with XYZ because they just always had it. But the people who got it later in life are looking at it from the perspective of, this is so difficult to monitor, this is so difficult to live with, right? It's perspective. It's how they're looking at it in that moment. So how much of your treatment, how much of your pain, how much of your suffering, your emotional and spiritual suffering that you go through is connected to these conditioned big medicine diagnoses and prognoses of how your experience with this condition will progress? And do you want to believe them? Could you choose not to? Could you choose something different? Who are you? Are you your disease? Are you your condition? Are you defined by your disability, by your shortcoming, by what you can't do anymore? I still to this day have a tendency to start conversations with strangers about being, on disability, about having problems getting around, about, and even in my healing, it's still a space that I start to slide into. Now, why is that? Why do we do that? I have a friend who identifies so clearly for so many years with his condition as something that was not him, that he would carry a picture of the way he used to look in his pocket to show people what he used to look like before his condition. Who are you? Are you your diagnoses? Has it become your identity? What is the benefit of that for you? What is the benefit of holding on to the belief that you will have this forever or that there's no other way to be? Our mindset matters. What you believe matters. Can you believe your diagnoses and reject the prognoses? Can you accept an autoimmune disease and then reject the deterioration that comes with it by the choices that you make in your life, by the choices that you make in your spirit? Because a lot of these autoimmunes are started with inflammation, with stress, with, trauma and pain experiences. So that's a huge one. So we each have to ask ourselves who we are. Our perception of ourselves helps to shift the physical world around us. Deepak Chopra wrote a book called The Way of the Wizard. And one of the things that he speaks about is living backwards in time, creating the image of who you are, right? If you are on your best, highest, and best timeline, having that image in your mind, and then behaving as if you are already on that timeline, making the decisions you would make if you were that version of you. So, who are you without your pain? Who am I without my title of disabled, without my title of lady who walks with a cane, without my title of having neuropathy, without my title of autoimmune? Who am I without that? And then that leads us to, who do we want to be? Who do I want to be? Do I want to be the person that has to be helped down off a curb? Do I want to be the person who everybody has to worry about? Am I going to be able to make it all the way down the aisle to sit down for the movie? Who do we want to be? What do we gain from that? Right? What are we gaining from the identity that we have found in our pain, in our chronic experience? Many of us have turned to communities, which are wonderful. However, some communities are very enabling, and any speak or talk of healing is immediately crushed with talk of, you're not allowing me to have my pain experience. What do you want to have? Do you want to own your pain experience and express only that? Or do you also want to own your healing experience and express that? And again, these are questions for you to ask you. How much has your pain defined who you are? Now, this is a really tough one, the choice. And I felt like I had this in my actual life, in my real life. I pretty much have had several incidents where I kind of passed out or flopped out on the ground, or some sort of seizure, or some sort of attack of some sort. And each time that I have these, it's like a reminder. It's like a reminder to me to stay on the path of healing. There are so many of us who live in so much pain that it feels like ending this life would be so much easier than continuing on in a space where we have to experience pain on that level. And this is a tough thing. This is a very tough thing. Are you living, or are you waiting to die? And what is your choice in it? Honestly, what is your choice in it? And this is really blunt, but the fear that the illness brings on creates a blind spot in us. And we will sit in a space of pain and hopelessness and remorse and sorrow and do exactly the opposite physically of what would be helping us in a situation because we feel like there is no other choice. Because we feel like how am I ever going to move forward with this? How am I ever going to take care of myself feeling this pain? How am I ever going to not be a burden on the world? How am I going to get through tomorrow? How am I going to get through today? Choose to get through today. Choose self-care. Choose self-acceptance. Choose self-love. And once you choose to do that, then you ask yourself again, what are you willing to give up so that you can heal? What are you willing to do so that you can choose self-love? What are you willing to change in your life to choose healing, to kick out chronic pain, to shift how you see everything? You have to choose to live. You have to consciously choose to live. Because that dark voice, the one that keeps telling you should just go ahead and this is too much pain, that one is going to be sticking around whether you want it to or not until you kick it out. It is that voice of light that we have to invite in. You have to actively choose self-care. You have to actively choose, I want to live, to move forward in this space of healing. Not just I want to live, I want to be healed. I want to be healing. I am healed. Each one of us needs to look at ourselves and face the fear that is connected to this. And this is another space where there's a lot of resistance because so many of us, through our dysfunction, have found belonging. Through our physical pain, have found connection with other people. We find the attention sometimes that we didn't get as children. We find the attention that perhaps we needed from our family members, from our friends. And we don't want to say it that way. We don't want to see it that way. And maybe you're mad at me for saying it right now. But any behavior that we're doing is connected to something that we are gaining from it. Okay? There is something that we are gaining from our pain, holding on to it, refusing to see it differently, refusing to think about pain differently. What would healing change in your life? Would it force you into independence? Would it push people around you away? One of the things I speak about often on my show is when we look at the life that we have and we say, I want change, or I want to kick out chronic pain, or I want to change my relationships, or I want to change how I look or how I move through life. We know, or we should have an image of our mind of what it looks like to achieve that goal, to achieve that thought. And when we look around at where we are now, we can see that we have to do things differently to make our life look like that vision in our mind. We can see the changes that have to be made in the life that we have now. Are you willing to let go of those things that need to change? Are you willing to change your relationships with the people around you? Having a chronic condition very clearly entangles everyone around us. And our energy becomes entangled with the people who are our caretakers or the people who are affected by our moments of lack personally, those moments where we aren't able to give 100%, or the moments where we need help to live, to move through the world, to exist. What do those connections mean to you? What would it mean if you no longer needed that person in the same way? Would they turn away and find someone else to take care of? Would you look at them differently? we have to be willing to look very closely at the fears around failure and the fears around success. The fear if this doesn't work, if trying to change doesn't work, and the fear around, oh my God, what if it does? One of the things on my journey that helped me was a particular movie, and I'm going to send it out in the link later. And this particular movie has a space in it where he's handing out this little product to people. And she brings it back to him and says, if I use this anymore, they will take away my disability check and I'm too old to start over. Because she looked at her pain coming back and saw her losing her financial security. And so she rejected it. And she chose the pain and the financial security. So we each have to look very closely at what this creates in us. Have an open mind to new ideas. Let me just jump over for 1 minute. There we go. Hello, hello. Okay. Have a mind that's open to new ideas. To create change in your life, you have to make change in your life. And you don't know what works until you actually try it. And this is one of those things that sounds like it's incredibly stupid. And yet, I had people like recommend to me a huge list of things to help me. A huge list of things. And when I was in my space of, this is what I am, this is what I will always be, you will never get better, you will only get worse. When I was in that mindset, I was closed-minded to every new idea. And the suggestion that something in my emotional or spiritual makeup was holding on to this pain for me, and that I was bringing some of this and twisting some of this into myself, was personally insulting to me. It was personally insulting to me. Totally, like, I get it. But taking these moments to shift, it can literally be a simple thing that somebody said to you once upon a time about how you should always trust a doctor. Or, your uncle so-and-so always knows the right thing to say. And maybe they said to you something and now that's how you're living. Be open to new ideas. Be open to change in our life. The other reason that I like to be open to new ideas is because I feel like the universe is always speaking to me. The universe is always talking to me. The universe is always sending me messages for what is for my highest and best good. When it comes to chronic pain, so many of us almost don't plan a future. We don't plan a future because we feel like, I'm going to let somebody down. I'm going to drop the ball. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm going to, screw everything up because of the level of pain that we have, because of the level of unreliability that we feel like we have, whatever your particular feeling is through your experience of chronic pain. The thing that we have to do is recognize that the person that we are at our worst moment in chronic pain is divine. And if we can see that person as our best version, we start to make the change. When we look at ourselves curled up in pain, when we look at ourselves contemplating ending it, when we look at ourselves not even recognizing how to move forward with something because the anxiety is crippling or the pain is holding on to it, if we can look at that person and accept us just in that moment exactly as we are, knowing that that person is the same exact person who will live your best version of you. When you start seeing that in yourself today, you will start seeing it in you every day. Set your mind on that version of yourself. Set your mind on that version of how you are moving through this situation. So let's get to the practical application, all right? I've talked a lot about the mindset. I've talked a lot about looking at the reasons why we hold on to these prognoses, not just the diagnoses. If you're a person who doesn't trust doctors, If you're a person who looks outside of the regular ways of doing anything, this is the section that you're going to be probably the most interested in. A lot of the stuff that I already talked about is very spiritually focused. It's very focused on our self growth, our self acceptance, our self change, and how deeply we are willing to go down the rabbit hole towards our own healing, towards our pain, towards our suffering, towards those spaces that affect our body. Now, let's talk for just a minute on why the thoughts that we're having and the perspective that we are having is going to affect our practical application. It's going to affect what we're doing. We need to make a clear decision to choose differently in our life. We chose life. If you're at the moment where you chose life, where you chose to make a difference, where you choose to reject the image that you've created of yourself based on the diagnoses and the prognoses of a doctor, of the healthcare field, of the people around you. It is time to choose to move forward in action, because only through changed behavior does change take place. Only through changing what you are thinking and what you are doing can change what will happen next. So I always like to give us some practical application. Let's jump into that. So you can see this little picture here. We're going to start right there with the little picture of her trying to force that unicorn up the little stairs to the Tower of Enlightenment. Okay? Ask it to work with you rather than fighting against it. Anything that we approach as a fight, anything that we approach as a struggle, anything that we approach as a battle, we are already setting ourselves up for failure. Because we don't want a battle, we don't want a war. We want to focus on a solution, right? We want to work together with our body. We want to work together with divine. We want to work together with nature, with our own psyche, to create real healing, in our lives. So now this is the first thing, and this is one of the things that made such a huge difference in my life. Create a partnership with your body. Okay, and this is going to sound really weird, but hey, if you haven't found something that worked so far, this is gonna help you. This is going to work for you. This is going to make a change in your situation. Each of us has a particular relationship with our body. We've known our body our entire life. How do you speak to your body? How do you relate to your body? Do you call your body names? Do you reject it? Do you insult it? Or are you kind to your body? Are you loving to your body? Are you putting things inside of your body that are not good for you? Are you putting things in your body that are healthy? Do you talk to your body? Do you ask it to work with you? And I know this sounds crazy, but it all has to do with the neuro-linguistic programming. And I'm going to put a link in the letter that's going to go out after this. I'm going to create tomorrow. I'm going to put a link in there about the words that we use and the thoughts that we have create reality in our body. There's a story about they used two different groups. So one of the groups practiced piano with just a piece of paper, like a rolled out piece of cardboard, okay? And they were practicing a song. Another group practiced the piano, that same song, same amount of experience on an actual piano. And the group that practiced without a piano learned it better and played it more clearly than the group with a piano. Because they weren't getting negative reinforcement every time they hit a wrong note. And so they were playing it all the way through, and they were playing it with confidence. They were working with their body and training their body as if they were actually playing piano, and then they were. I gave my body a separate name, and I speak to my body every day, and I apologized to it. I asked it to forgive me. I asked it to love me. I told it I was going to work with it. Let's work together. I'm going to try to put really good foods in you, foods that will help support me, foods that will help us together. I thank it for all the healing that it's doing. I thank it for all of the support that it gives me. And even more so when it fails me, even more so when it gives out. And then I ask it, what could I give you to help you? Where did I go wrong? What decision did I make that created this in you that you had to take a rest? I can look at it from a different space because I'm in a partnership with my body. Imagine how that partnership will change your journey through healing. Imagine if every time your body hurt, you said something nice to it. If every time you were having a pain, you cheered yourself on, you hugged yourself, you loved yourself. You said, let me find something I can do to support you, body. Let me find something I can do to support you. Our bodies are machines. And if you think about your car, your body is like a car, and you have to listen to the spaces where it starts to misbehave. You have to listen to the spaces where the engine starts to make noise. You have to listen to the spaces where it's not operating properly. And then you fix it. And then you work on it, and then you try it, and then you go find a mechanic, and then you put the best kind of out of gas in your car, and then you paint the outside so it looks beautiful, right? You have to work with your body to move forward in this space of healing. So the next space is exploring. Where I want you to take a solid trip into food is medicine. This was another one that I rejected very strongly. I am not a big fan of this. I am not a big fan of exploring, exploring food as medicine because I like crappy foods, and I was eating crappy foods. So each of us can seek out any kind of help that we want, any kind of thing that makes you feel right, any kind of thing in you that is going to help you. And I want you to dig into food as healing. Let me see. We'll get that. So this first one is Oracle Alchemy. You can use herbs to help you. And Eddie's lovely Lady Robin is in charge of this. They hand make every single thing that's coming to you, intentioned with love, intentioned with goodness and kindness and unconditional love and healing of nature. So this is definitely going to be in the link if you are interested in it. You can also, let me come back here. We also have Mountain Rose Herbs, which I'm also going to be sharing a link for. And you can get teas, you can get salves, you can get tinctures, you can get all kinds of herbal blends. This particular site does herbal education. They do classes. You can always find someone who's selling some kind of oil, right? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about this. We have to give it a chance to work. This sort of stuff is cumulative. So when you are adding in things like herbal remedies, when you're adding in vitamin remedies, when you are adding in changes to your life, you have to give them enough time to cumulatively work. If you are going to add in some sort of tea or some sort of lotion that you're going to do every day, you have to allow it the time to work in your life. And you have to set your mind on believing it. You have to set your mind on actually creating that change, on creating what's happening in your life. You can also get into green eating. So I have a very good friend who does wellness, workplace wellness, who does food wellness. I mean, you can just throw something on Facebook and find 50 people who are going to do this, who know how to do this sort of thing. The thing is, are you willing to take a chance to do it? Are you willing to try something that you haven't tried before? Are you willing to make the changes in your life? I watched something the other day on television that was something like My 600-Pound Life or My 1,000-Pound Life. And, these poor people who are going through this sort of a thing, and I have family members that are in this situation, the life they live is difficult and it's hard to get around. And they have to have family members like help them to clean and help them to go to the restroom. And then they go to the doctor for the first time to get bariatric surgery. And the first thing the doctor tells them is you have to lose 40 pounds. And these people whose entire life is pain, whose entire existence is finding ways to survive, lifting up things and tucking and different lotions, say it's too hard to eat more vegetables, or say it's too hard to make the changes necessary to step into this new phase of their life. And you have to ask yourself, and it's up to each one of you. It is your free will, but you have to ask yourself, what are you actually willing to do? I personally went more vegan than not. Dirty vegan, vegan-esque. I wouldn't call myself a perfect vegan, but I would call myself someone that was willing to try it and continues to be willing to try it. So now this is the other thing, be willing to try new products and new procedures with an open mind. So for example, you can throw a rock and find a YouTube video that has acupuncture points on it, that has stimulation that you can do with your hands physically, where you can touch yourself, where you can, that did not sound right, where you can use your hands and chi, the energy of your hands, to create a space of healing or to create a space of relief. And you can literally watch videos at any moment just by Googling and find 50 pieces of advice. If we do physical movement, let me see if we're up to this physical movement stuff here. Oh, let me do the grounding mat first. Okay. So this grounding mat is the other thing that I believe really, really helped me. So I made one myself. I used a video of a grounding mat that's also going to be in the link that we made for like $6. Okay. So this is another one of these products that I watched what's it called? Starts with a D, a documentary on it. I thought for sure, this is ridiculous. This is the stupidest thing. But when I made one and I used it, I saw real change. So just to give you an idea of the healing that has happened in my life and the time period that it took, because it takes time to kind of kick in. So I went vegan-esque in February of 2020, and I took up what I would call a version of yoga that most people would not call yoga, but I do call it yoga, and created a grounding mat. And I sat on this every day, and I started speaking to myself and loving myself and telling myself that I was sorry for hurting it all these years and that I was going to do better. Now, sitting on this grounding mat, it took about 4 months. And I started to be able to move my toes. I hadn't been able to move my toes freely since 2010. And here we were in the summer of 2020, towards the fall, and I could move my toes. I could move my feet again. I could go up on my tiptoes. I was walking more clearly from the couch to the kitchen, around the house, and it just continued. So I poo-pooed this grounding mat. I did not want to make one. I did not want to get one, but I did it. And I had a mindset that it was going to help me. And grounding mat specifically might not be for you. It might be the Tommy Copper sleeves. It might be a TENS machine. Only you will know what's right for you, but you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to be in that space. So now this is the hardest one to talk about because I am not a fan. Because I am not a fan of telling people with chronic pain to exercise, because I didn't like it when people told me to exercise. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was going to help. Why am I going to move more when it hurts me to move? But it is a downward spiral that not moving hurts us more in the long run than moving will in this moment. That while not moving in this moment might help you to feel a little bit better because you're not going to have that immediate amount of pain that comes with movement. In the long run, it's going to cause you exponentially worse levels of chronic pain. If I could give myself one bit of advice, it would have been to start doing yoga, to start moving 10 years ago when it first came on, instead of slowing down my movement and moving less. Because the less I moved, the more it hurt. And I understand that not everybody is going to be able to move to the same level. You need to choose what you can do. Now, the universe did kind of give me a very specific image over and over again. I have personally used it. When I use this particular exercise, this particular movement, I get downloads from it personally. That's just me. I'm going to share the screen here. So if you picture a Vitruvian man, now you don't have to have your junk out, but it will mean you mean business if you got your junk out. That's a joke from The Watchmen, if you know that movie. So this movement of the Vitruvian man with the arms, and you can go as slowly as you can, and maybe you have a shoulder problem, so you can only do one arm. Maybe you can't stand up and do it. Maybe you can only do it from your chair. But this level of movement does something to your heart space. So when you are moving in that, I want you to focus on the energy in your heart. And I want you to focus on the light that is shining out from your heart as you move your arms slowly. Doesn't have to be fast. But if you're doing no movement, if your chronic pain has you trapped to the point that you're doing no movement, that's a good place to start. And I'm sure that a lot of you have heard of the DDP, the Diamond Page yoga transformations. You know, this gentleman is one of the most famous ones that's done it, or well-known ones that does it. And, you know, this was him. I wasn't that far off from that sort of walking. And, you know, he was able to find something that was so healing for him through this yoga. He had a huge transformation. He had a huge change. And it's not out of your reach. It's not. It's not out of your reach. Now, is it going to make you perfectly healed? Probably not. Is anything going to make you perfectly healed? Honestly, probably not. But if we can look at it from a different space, if we can have some sort of healing from it, if we can get our minds into the space of a shift in our physical perception of ourselves, then we're going to be able to move forward in this so much easier. So I have this, oh, here, wait a minute. Let me kill some of these because I hear it running in the background. So we have this, here's the exercise one, moving, simple stretches, yoga, qigong, whatever you are able to do. And I know it sucks. I know it sucks. I know it sucks. I didn't even want to put this one in here. I'm not a fan of exercise. But I had a movement where everything shifted. I had a moment where everything changed. I had a thought process where I chose life. And for me to live, I have to physically move my body, even if it hurts. I have to walk, even if it hurts. I have to move, even if it hurts, because that's what I was willing to give up, was sitting still. That's what I was willing to give up, were the foods that reward me emotionally, rather than the foods that feed my system as fuel. I let go of the emotional attachment that I had to the pain. I let go of the emotional connection that I felt with being dependent on another person and on something other than myself. This shift of kicking out chronic pain is really about making a decision to choose something different, to have a perspective shift, in which we are really looking at the role that our pain plays in our life. Do we define ourselves through that pain? Do we shift ourselves into a space where we don't see that anymore, where who we are is that divine space? And the pain that we carry is part of our triumph, is part of our expansion and our awakening. Hopefully you have an open mind as you move through this. Reality is affected by our perception of it. And merely by looking at your life from a different perspective, you can change things. Just by changing how you look at the condition you have, you can change it. Just by looking at the condition that you have from a space of accepting the diagnosis without living the prognosis, you can change your life. I know someone who literally changed their entire life through their mind and through focusing on their health. And it's an autoimmune situation, and they went from being in a wheelchair to living a very full life, having another child, and having their own business. Because they opened their mind to the healing and to the perspective shift. And they used practical application to change their life, deciding that it's harder not to make those changes than it is to keep pushing forward through the pain. What are you willing to shift? So I'm going to send out a message probably tomorrow. It's going to have some of the recommendations for this journey. We are going to hang around a little bit afterwards if you are interested and get some readings. And I am so grateful that you came tonight. I'm so grateful that you showed up. You can get links to the information when you go into the email, and there will be a recording of this on a website that I will be sure to share with you. Thank you so very much for joining me tonight.